Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to our office hour today. So, as a follow-up from our last office hour, we're supposed to cover the final part of the final concept of object-oriented programming, which is polymorphism. So far we have, okay, let me share that patch. Okay, I already have the task pasted here because we're supposed to run through one of the possible solutions for the task. But before we get on with that, yeah, so far we've covered inheritance, covered abstraction, covered encapsulation, and what's left is polymorphism. In a sense, we've also covered polymorphism, as it's in that the way we get to handle polymorphism is by overriding methods. So it's pretty much the idea of polymorphism is somewhat flexibility to adjust or modify a certain to modify code in different parts of our application. What do I mean? You know, when we override a method that was written in an abstract class, that was what's the word? When we override a method that is part of an abstract class, that's most likely, okay, let's use an example because saying it out, I'm even confusing myself. So we have a sample abstract class right here. And if we have a method inside of it that simply prints the name, for example, and it takes in, it's just an example. So here is a signature method that has been declared in an abstract class. Now, if we were to inherit this parent class, that is to create a subclass, you remember, inheritance is pretty much us using the extends keyword. This makes it possible for our subclass to inherit whatever properties or methods that is inside of the parent class, which in this case is example. Now, we can choose to modify how we want this method to be in each of our subclasses. And the way we do that is by overriding the parent method, like so. Let's just copy this. Is to override the parent method like so. You know, the way we have it here in the abstract class, you just close the statement with a semicolon and you don't necessarily have to flesh it out. But when you override the method, it means you want to actually do something with that method. So you are expected to flesh out the method in this case by either you use an expression or you use curly braces, as we have covered many times before. So in this case, we can do whatever it is we want. In fact, we can choose to be rebellious and decide to print a number instead of a name. We can do anything we want with this method that we are trying to override here in our subclass. So this is pretty much the entire idea of polymorphism, where we can, we have the flexibility to, what's the word? We have the flexibility to modify certain features within our code base in whichever way suits our use case. So yeah, on your own, we've covered the basics of each of the concepts. So on your own, you could rewatch and also go through the materials again if things are still a bit shaky for you. And in the case where you have a specific question, please do not fail to ask at any point using the form, and we'll cover it whenever we can in our office hour. So yeah, that is it about the basics of object-oriented programming. The other aspects of the materials for the week, I didn't get any feedback that it was confusing or that anyone had questions on it. Hence the reason why we just focused on OOP. But if there is any question that comes up in following weeks, you might as well also ask and we'll take them. Plus, those are also concepts like error handling and the like. So that those are things that we're going to use often in coming phase hours. So, but sure, if you have a question, you are free to also leave it using the form. Materials are on the LMS. So check materials under week 4 and you'd see what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's it for object-oriented programming. Let's go into the solution for week 4's task. And yes, I know there's still pending submissions to be graded. Please don't worry. I'm going to get to all the submissions eventually. There are over 200 submissions for week 3 and 4, and I took it upon myself personally to grade each of the submissions. So it's going to take longer time than it would have been if there were multiple people grading. So please don't stress. All submissions will be graded eventually. All right. So here's the task. Here's the task. As usual, we're going to break it down to the different requirements, right? And maybe we could do some extra things if time permits, but we're just going to break the task down first of all, and then we start to solve it. So it says you're expected to build a console bank. A user should be able to deposit, withdraw, and view their account balance. Now, the first instruction is to create a class with a suitable name that has the following fields or properties. So let's do that. Oops. To create a class, let's just go with what we're expected to build, which is a console bank. So it says to create a class that has each of these properties. We have the account name, the account number, and the account balance. So let's declare them. First, we have the account name. And then we have the account number. Let's just make it a string. And then we have account balance. I would declare this property as a double because, it's very possible that, if we're using a real life scenario, it's possible that a user can withdraw or deposit money with a decimal. They can choose to withdraw 4,000 and 4,000 naira and 60 kobo. Just saying. So it's best to just play safe. And in this case, we'll declare this property as a double. And then like so. So this satisfies the first part of this task to create all the required properties. Then the next thing we want to do is, it says create methods that handle the following. The first method we're expected to create displays the available balance of the user. So there are quite a number of ways that we can do this. Is either we create a method that just returns a print statement of the user's account balance, or we actually return the account balance and then maybe print it somewhere in the main method or something. But we're going to keep things as simple as possible, and we'll just have a method called get balance that simply prints the following. Your account balance is account balance, right? And then it says to create a method that increases the available balance of the user when a deposit is made. This also, you can do it whichever way. You can choose to return a value, you can choose not to return a value, but we're just going to, let's just see how it progresses, right? So first off, let's just make it basic. Let's have void, this is to deposit, so deposit funds. And then the next thing is to, it decreases the user's account available balance when a withdrawal is made. So next thing is to draw funds, like so. So we have, although we have created the method, but we haven't actually done what is required, right? Except for the first one where we're displaying the account balance as required. So now let's flesh out the deposit funds method, okay? So first off, we know that if you're going to deposit into your account, you're expected to pass in an amount, right? The amounts that you intend to deposit. So let's just create, let's just create an argument amount, like so. And then I mostly prefer using named parameters. It's just my own preference. You can declare it in whichever way you want to, or in whichever way you already did. But it's just a personal preference to use named parameters when of using named parameters sometimes. So yeah, we have passed in the parameter for the amounts that we intend to deposit into our account, right? And then it says for the deposits, we want to display a message in the console that says money deposited successfully when user deposits money. So in this case where we are, okay, I'm just going to move this class to the top so that whenever I format, it doesn't always take me up, right? Okay. So where were we? Yeah, to display a message in the console that says money deposited successfully when the user deposits money. Okay, because this is a name parameter and it's very possible that a null value can be passed, the first thing we want to do is to check if the amount is null. This is so that our code doesn't break in the case where the value passed is actually null and we have to do some manipulation of some sort. It's just best to always play safe. Picture the worst case scenario and handle it. a pretty great practice. Just think of something that a user can likely do, something that's can possibly happen, a possible scenario. Just imagine it and try to handle it in your code before it actually breaks when a user uses your application. It's possible that someone at the bank, when handling your deposits, right? If you go to the bank in person while handling your deposits, they might have in their head, maybe they already imputed the amount, but they didn't. If in that case, that's what we're trying to handle right now. So if amount is not equal to null, what we want to do is so I'm just going to do something extra. So what we would likely want to do is to modify our account balance and then print money deposited successfully. So we can do that by, so I'm just going to create another variable called modified balance. And inside of it, I have account balance, and then I want to add the amount that was deposited here, and then print money deposited successfully. What's the error? Okay, yeah, we're going to handle this. The way we'll handle this is to actually assign a value. I forgot to do that before. We're going to assign a value to our balance. We're not mechanics, we are ballers. So let's just assign ourselves 500,000. And that should handle the error since this value is no longer null. Okay, so yeah, we have modified the balance and we have printed money deposited successfully. We can choose to make this a double. You can choose to make this a double and return the modified balance. This is just extra. If you didn't do that, it's not a problem, I promise. So this is just what was expected at the point where you actually have a successful transaction. But additionally, we just want to return the modified balance whenever the user deposits funds in their account. And yeah, so the error here says that the body might complete normally, causing null to be returned, but the return type double is a potentially non-nullable type. Try adding either a return or throw statement at the end. So pretty much it's telling us that at the moment, it's possible for this method to return a null value. How? We're already returning modified balance here, so how can it possibly return a null value? Now, remember we have an if statement here. We're first checking if the amount is not equal to null, then we're going to carry out what is in the body of this if statement. But what about in the case where the amount is actually null? We have to return a value from this method right here, right? So what we can do is to just simply return, we wouldn't get this error if we actually declared our method using the void keyword, but we're getting this because we added a return type, hence why we need to return what is expected of it, regardless of whatever is going on inside of the body of our function. So if there is no deposits, ideally, we just want to return the user's account balance because no modification was made and all that. We can then maybe pass in a message like an error occurred, just so that the user gets some feedback, right? So yeah, this is pretty much the entire idea of the deposit funds method, what was expected. Let's check if we actually covered all that's required. So displays account number, account balance of the user, we already did that. Increases the available balance of the user when a deposit is made. Oh, it's actually part of the requirements. So it's not like we're doing anything extra. So yeah, we are increasing, that's what we did right here, increasing the account balance by the amount that was passed in. And we're returning that modified balance here in our function. And then in the case where the amount is null, we're just returning our account balance as it is. Then we want to decrease the user's available balance when a withdrawal is made. So it's pretty much the exact same thing we have going on here. So instead of having to write everything from scratch, let's just copy this and paste. We have now this is throwing an error, like I said before. When a method, I mean, like I've said in previous class, when your method is declared with a void keyword, it's not expecting you to return a value. Hence why we're having an error here, because it's expecting you to not return anything, right? But I'm going to use this withdraw funds method to explain something in a bit. All right, so it says decrease the user's available balance when a withdrawal is made. So this is pretty much it. And then, okay, not deposits, let's say with successful. But it says here in B that you should use control flow statements to handle the following. It says display a message in the console that says insufficient funds when the user tries to withdraw more than the available balance. Oh my, I did it again. Sincere apologies if you have not been able to clearly see my screen. I totally forgot to zoom in. Okay, where were we? Display a message in the console that says insufficient funds when the user tries to withdraw more than the available balance. Okay. So first off, we're checking if the amount is not equal to null. And if it's not equal to null, what we want to do is to check if the amount, if the amount is less than or equal to the account balance of the user, then that's the only time that we want to do this. We're doing less than or equal to because it's possible that a user wants to withdraw all the money that they have in their account, and that is fine, right? So if the amount is less than or equal to the account balance, then we want to subtract the account balance, want to subtract the amount from the account balance and tell the user that the withdrawal was successful. And then in the case where it's not, we want to inform the user that they have insufficient funds. Like so. Display a message on the console that says, oh, okay, we already handled that. Okay, now remember I said I wanted to use this method here as I wanted to let you I wanted to talk about something based on what we have going on here. Our code like this is really wrong. It's really, really wrong, and you're going to see why in a bit. So let's create an instance of our class. That's console bank. The first method we have here is to get account balance. So if we do bank balance, then we also have bank deposit funds and bank with withdraw funds. Now remember, we passed in named parameters to each of our functions, so it's not going to be a problem if we decide to not pass a value, because it's a named parameter and it's optional. Let's comment this out first, and then let's work with the rest. So if we run our code, okay, let's bring, right, if we run our code, we see first off what we're printing here, which is your account balance is this value. And then next we're getting an error code. We're getting an error code because that is what we expected. That's what we instructed the function to do, or the method to do, when the null value is returned, is passed in. When this amount variable is null, we want to return a message that says an error code. But if we were to change this, oops, were to change this and add a value, you should get the proper message that the money deposited successfully. And then if we were to add another print statement, maybe saying what do you want to say? New balance is we can also do that as well, and we should get our updated value in the console. Now, because we have our if statements and we are returning, so return, aside that this function is expecting a value of this data type returned from the method, return also breaks this statement and prevents the rest of the code from running. So if there is no return value, there's not going to be a break. Every single part of the code is going to run, except if maybe you have an if, and you attach an else statement or an else if. So that else if or that else is somewhat giving the function or the method another instruction, like what to do in the case where this condition in the if statement is false. But here we don't have any else statement, we don't have else if. How then can we handle breaking our breaking in quotes our statement so that only the section of the code that meets the requirements is carried out? Let's test that using this withdraw funds method, right? So right now, if I were to run the code just as we had for deposit funds, I'm expecting to see an error code because we didn't pass any method, any value to amounts. If we were to pass in a value, You see that we have withdrawal successful printed in the console, insufficient funds printed in the console, and an error code printed in the console. Every single part of the function, every single part of the method was returned to us because we didn't break any part of our code to make sure that it stops where the condition is met. So in this case where we're not returning any value, one way we can do this is to add an else. We can add an else here. And we can also add an else here. Well, that's a lot of else's. That's so many else inside of our code. And if we're to run it, we're expecting to see the right text displayed, which is here, withdraw successful, because amount is not null and amount is less than and equal to the account balance. And if we're to pass in the exact value, we should see withdraw successful as well. But if we're to go beyond that, we're going to see insufficient funds. Okay, so instead of the else statement, something else we can do is to return a null value. So if you have a return, if you use the return keyword, and then you follow it with a semicolon, this in a sense is just saying we're returning nothing. We're not returning any value. So we can do that here. And we can also do that here. Not necessarily. It's not exactly required for the last statement because this is the default value returned if any of these fail. So if I were to run my code now, I'm still going to get just insufficient funds because we're passing in way too much money. And if I were to reduce it, would get just withdrawal successful. So those are two ways in which we can break, in quotes, our code to limit it to just the block of code that meets the condition that meet the condition that we set for that block of code, right? And just like the deposit funds method, we can also return a double to see the our updated balance. We can. So in this case, we can't return a null value. We can't just return a null value anymore because it's expecting a double. So what we would do here is to return modified balance. And here we return account balance. And finally, we'll also return account balance. Then if we run the code, it's going to be the same thing. And we can also copy from this guy and print our new balance. Like so. So this is a very simple way in which one could have handled the task. Yeah, this is a possible way in which one could have handled the task. And I hope that this task was able to help you practice on classes, on more on variables and functions. In classes, we refer to them as properties and methods. Hope it was also a way for you to practice control flow and I hope you had fun while working on this particular task. Let me check the comment section if there are any questions. What if we used positional arguments to get the amount and they have to check for cases of no values? Are we in the right track? Of course. If you joined at the beginning, I just said that it was a personal preference. So we can choose to pass in a positional argument. You see here that we're getting a where is it? We're getting a warning here that the value can't be null. So the condition is always going to be true, hence telling us that we do not need this additional if statement. We don't need this if statement here because it's expected that when you call this method, you're supposed to pass in a value to it. So we can take this out in this case and take this out as well. And this is still right. Can choose to do the same thing for the withdrawal and remove the if statement as well as this. Then we go here and we adjust how we pass in the values. And this is still totally right. This is still totally correct. It's just everyone is free to, handle the task whichever way. It's just a personal preference to use named parameters because I like to see what field I'm assigning a value to. I mean, just like this, I know this is expecting me to pass in a double, but in the case of named parameters, I get to know which it's just for readability for me when I'm going through the code. Instead of having to go check the function, I can just easily see what is going on or what value is passed in by the name of the parameter. So it's just a personal preference, really. Of course, as long as you can add as many, you are free to explore with the task as much as you want to, but it's just expected that you meet the requirements first before doing anything extra. All right, you can just you're free to explore as much as your hands could carry you. Just meet the requirements first and then can do the rest. All right, so that's it for today's session. Remember, if you have a question, you drop it using the form and we'll cover it in today's class. Oh yeah, there was a question that I saw on the form. I can't seem to find the tab. Okay, there we go. So the question was that he or she did not submit tasks for week 2 and 3 and wants to know if it's possible to cover the gap in knowledge. Okay, all the resources for the weeks that have passed are still available to everyone. So you can actually go to previous weeks and go through each of the materials. If you missed it, the only issue is that you would not be able to submit your tasks anymore, but you can still go to previous materials that for the previous weeks and go through them on your own. If it's possible for you to meet up with the present week, that would be really awesome. But yeah, submitting tasks for weeks that have passed is not possible. The task will not be reopened. So I hope that answers your question. That's to the person who dropped it. All right. So thank you all so much for joining today's office hour. I hope you were not left confused at the end of this session, and I'm always open to answer your questions. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining. I'll see you all in our next office hour, which is on Tuesday. Oops. Which is on Tuesday. Yeah. See you all then.